Meantime, the federal Conservative Party leadership race is turning into a crowded affair. There are now 8 candidates looking to replace former leader Erin O'Toole, who was removed by the party's caucus in February.
Now, one of the most recent candidates to throw his hat into the ring is Ontario MP Scott Aitchison, and he joins us now live in Toronto this morning. Good morning, Scott. Thanks for joining us here on CP24 Breakfast. You know, before we begin, I think you would acknowledge yourself, you're a relative unknown to most people, perhaps even watching this morning. Do you consider yourself to be like a Harper Scheer conservative, or more of perhaps a Brian Mulroney conservative? And how do you think you can actually win this race when you already consider who you're running up against? It's a pretty crowded field of people with recognizable names.
Well, Nick, first of all, thank you for having me on. I think that there's no question that I'm not as well known as some of the other candidates, but thanks to you, you're helping change that right now. So I consider myself to be conservative, and I believe that really what we need in Ottawa is a conservative who understands that Canadians are just sick and tired of the bickering and the rhetoric and the name calling and the yelling back and forth. We need real leaders who are prepared to take up the challenges Canadians face and solve problems and not just yell at each other.
Right. And Scott, you got into politics pretty early when you were 21 years old for the first time. And then you were the mayor of Huntsville. What do you think needs to be changed in Ottawa right now besides the bickering, and how do you think you're going to change that? For instance, I'd like to get your take on carbon tax.
Well, as a mayor and as a municipal councillor, it's a consensus building model. There's no question that's a little bit different in Ottawa, but it doesn't mean you can't find common ground in Ottawa. And that's part of the problem that I saw. I was elected in 2019 and was completely dismayed at how it's more about partisan attack. It's more about scoring a cheap political point than it is about being there for the people you represent and solving problems. I've stated many times that I'm opposed to a carbon tax, not because I don't believe that climate change is a very real threat, but I represent people in my community. People think of Muskoka and Parry Sound as the playground of the rich and famous, and there's no question there's a lot of folks like that there. But the people who live and work in my community are, the median income is 20% below the provincial average. And many people literally cannot afford to heat their homes and eat healthy food. We can't be making the solution to climate change and meeting our targets. We can't put that on the most vulnerable of our society. We need to find better ways to do that. And so that's why I'm opposed to a carbon tax. We need to find better ways to reduce our footprint and help people reduce theirs.
In the meantime, though, Mr. Aitchison, if you did win the leadership and then potentially 3 years down the road, became prime minister, because there's that Liberal NDP deal that's in place right now, effectively guaranteeing, it would seem, that the Liberals will remain in power until at least 2025. Won't it be too late by then to try to unwind a carbon tax? Won't we be beyond that in this country?
Well, you've seen Justin Trudeau's deals many times now, and I'd like to see the fine print of them. I don't know if they'll actually get that accomplished. I'm not sure this marriage will really last for 3 years. They've formalized what they've been doing all along. I think Canadians are frustrated with how everything's happening in Ottawa. So I'm just committed to making sure that we help the most vulnerable in our society, that we make life more affordable. Everything's getting more expensive, and the government's not doing enough to deal with that. And I'm going to continue to, make sure that we are focusing on affordability and livability for all Canadians.
Yeah, and Scott, your tagline is the right approach, and yet the Conservatives have lost 3 straight elections. What do you think is the solution to convince more Canadians to vote for the CPC?
Well, I think we need principled leadership. I think we need an engaged and cohesive team. That's another problem that we have. And we need to make sure that we have a message that resonates across Canada, not just in particular regions. And that's part of the problem with our politics in general. We see politicians and political war rooms demonizing one group of Canadians to appeal to another. We need leadership that actually calls Canadians to common purpose and bring this country together. That's what I offer, and that's what I intend to give as leader of the Conservative Party, and hopefully one day Prime Minister of this country. All
right, we'll of course continue to follow the race very closely. That is federal Conservative Party leadership candidate Scott Aitchison joining us this morning. Scott, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.